Well, then that happened. Donald Trump decided to one up his arrest of a state court judge, one up his arrest of a member of Congress, and now go for the jugular, go for a governor. In this case, Gavin Newsom, governor of California, and his obvious political rival. So from the White House lawn, we saw he takes a question from the press, and he says that Tom Homan, his border czar, should arrest Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom had gone on social media and some interviews and said, all right, tough guy, I'm barely paraphrasing. You want to arrest somebody? Arrest me for the lawless use of the National Guard without my permission in California, for turning us into a totalitarian state, for flaming the impassioned protests and having them tip over into violent riots in order to serve Donald Trump's bidding. And Ben Meiselas, my co-founder of Legal AF, he's got a series of interviews with people in his home state of California to address this issue. And the first one up is Senator Alex Padilla. Senator Alex Padilla represents the great state of California. He had some choice words for Donald Trump and this rogue, out-of-control president in his interview just today with Ben Meiselas. And here's a clip.
I want to bring in California Senator Alex Padilla. I want to get your take on all of that. First, just your immediate response to what I showed you. Then let's talk more broadly about what's going on.
Yeah, sadly, it's not shocking. We have in Donald Trump is a president who is has the biggest ego of any president I ever can think of, combined with the cruelty and vindictiveness that is Donald Trump. And it's playing out in Los Angeles right now, my home. So this is actually very personal for me. This is a crisis of Donald Trump's own making. When you have the Department of Homeland Security using increasingly cruel and aggressive tactics for immigration enforcement, of course, in a community as diverse as Los Angeles, you're going to have people speaking up in defense of our fundamental rights and due process, the due process rights that the Trump administration consistently has been ignoring. And so at every turn, Donald Trump will seek an excuse, make up an excuse, if necessary, to further escalate the situation. So that's what's transpired in Los Angeles. I want to thank all the folks that have been out there peacefully protesting. The vast majority of folks are peacefully and righteously protesting. And as the folks that are involved with the vandalism and whatnot, that's not helpful. It has no place in this protest or anywhere else, but it's hurting us by taking the attention away from standing up for immigrants' rights and due process and having the president and some of the press focus strictly on some of the violence and vandalism that's going on.
My wife is first generation American. Her family's from Guadalajara. They became citizens a few decades ago. Her mom did. They live in Huntington Park, and her nieces and nephews are at their graduation as we're recording this interview. And there's ICE trucks right around there where the graduation is taking place at Huntington High School, at the middle school right there. And I can, I hear from them how terrified they are about, what's going on. You're seeing people arrested in the streets. And it seems that ICE is specifically targeting not the criminals like they said they were focused on, but they're going into the hardworking Latino communities here, people who were living their American dreams, almost seeming knowing that that's how you provoke the people. Because when you rip people apart from their families, people get pissed. So what do you say to the people who are scared right now?
Yeah, it's hang in there. Know your rights. Right, because regardless of your immigration status, you do have due process rights. If you are approached by an ICE officer or federal agent, you are not forced to respond to their questions. You have the right to access a lawyer, all those basic things. But sadly, we know that Donald Trump has been working for this moment for years and years and years. Right, the cruelty of his speech started when he came down that escalator at Trump Tower to launch his campaign for president the very first time. So as you point out, we're a far cry from him only targeting violent, dangerous criminals. That's what he talked about at the campaign trail. And I don't think, frankly, there's any disagreement with that if that was the priority and the mission. But when we hear story after story of an otherwise, law-abiding, innocent, working man, working woman providing for their family being caught up with detention and deportation operations without access to counsel, without due process, that is absolutely wrong. When you hear stories of a 4-year-old girl in the Central Valley who's dependent on life-saving treatment to keep her alive, being noticed that she's going to be deported. Thankfully, they rescinded that, but only because of the public pressure that was mounted against the administration in that particular case. For a federal agent to show up in houses of worship, in schools, you're talking about, the high school graduation in HP. Yes, we call Huntington Park HP, or even in elementary schools recently in Los Angeles, misrepresenting that they had parental approval to talk to kids. What is Donald Trump doing? And so, of course, it's enraging. We have to continue to speak up, not just organizing in the communities in Los Angeles and around the state and around the country, but know that we're going to fight and keep pushing here in Congress, demanding information and calling them on every overreach, every out of policy or every unconstitutional tactic that they continue to try to deploy.
And here's a prime example of what Trump's ICE is doing. I think this needs to get more attention. So David Huerta, U.S. citizen, president of the SEIU, very important union here in California and across the country. He was the president of California's SEIU. He was there peacefully explaining to people what their rights were. And I want to just show our audience what happened to him. Here, play this clip. And so based on what everybody saw there, the DOJ then doubled down. They charged him with conspiracy to impede an officer. There's a criminal complaint. His arraignment is today. And so we're seeing the weaponization of the Department of Justice as well, and in trying to make an example of a union leader like David Huerta. What's your response to that situation?
Yeah, well, first of all, my heart goes out to David and his family. I've known David for many, many years. He's not just a local leader. He's a local hero for his advocacy for working people as president of his SIU local and his leadership at the state level. But look, I can't help but take this personally. Born and raised in Los Angeles, proud son of immigrants from Mexico. So let's for a moment go back to California in the year 1994. When Governor Pete Wilson was struggling in his reelection campaign. So what does he do? He starts trying to blame all of California's woes at the time on immigrants and the immigrant community. He championed a ballot measure known as Proposition 187, sort of a precursor to all this anti-immigrant rhetoric that we're hearing coming out of the White House today. It was, to me, personally offensive and insulting, so much that I left an engineering career behind to get involved in politics, to commit to public service. And thankfully, California is much different politically today than it was back then. But the attacks keep coming. And if anything, we should look at that California narrative of people like my parents who had been here for years and years and years without any urgency of becoming a citizen, finally doing so, and so many others like them doing the same. You had my generation, we were a little bit younger at the time, but committing ourselves to organizing and advocating. That's why California is the California of today. That should be a model for other communities across the country to follow. Let's get through these difficult, challenging times, but build on them and build that better future. Consider this. California is not just the most populous state in the nation. We are the most diverse state in the nation, home to more immigrants than any state in the nation, mostly documented, yes, some undocumented. But California is also the largest economy of any other state in the nation by far. The fourth largest economy in the world, not despite its immigrant population, but thanks to the contribution of the immigrant community as workforce, as consumers, as entrepreneurs. So not only is the administration attacking the immigrant community in the way that they're doing, cruel and inhumane, in some ways unlawful and unconstitutional, but they're doing it against our own interests. Focus on the violent criminals, but leave the hardworking people that our economy and our nation depends on. They deserve better. And to be a whole different thing entirely if Trump said, we'll focus a little bit on enforcement, and then here's the plan to modernize our immigration system. That's where our focus and our conversation ought to be. I can tell you that's where we want to be as a Senate and as a Congress. But as long as Donald Trump is around, you're seeing their overreach and their cruelty at every turn. And the last thing, because I think this is also important, timing is everything, right? His tariff war is failing tremendously. There's certainly no peace between Ukraine and Russia right now. And so when all else fails for Donald Trump, what does he do? His fallback is always demonize immigrants, it's attack immigrants, because he thinks that's what plays well with his political base. At the same time, we know that there's this horrendous budget bill working its way through Congress. It passed the House of Representatives with a 1-vote majority. Now Senate Republicans are trying to get this done in the next several weeks. Gut health care, the social safety net, underwrite tax breaks for billionaires. Donald Trump doesn't want us talking about this. So what does he do? He manufactures this crisis in Los Angeles to try to change the narrative and try to shift people's attention away. Let's not let him get away with it.
Senator Alex Padilla, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your advocacy and all the work you do here in California.
Welcome back. We're going to be getting the Attorney General for California next in an interview on the Midas Touch Network and on Legal AF. So proud to have you here. We're trying to make this one-stop shopping for all things law and politics. It is important now more than ever that we join together in fellowship, talk truth to each other, take a look at leaders stepping forward with great political sacrifice and personal sacrifice to take on Donald Trump, the wannabe dictator and fascist. But we have to. I'm glad you're here. While you're here, take a moment, hit the free subscribe button, and help us continue to grow this pro-democracy channel. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popak. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.